The time has come to tell the truth.
I'll wake up and smell the coffee.
Today is the beginning of a new chapter.
Another future's possible, but we've got to fight for it.
Hello and welcome to the Debated Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will. And in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Mairead O'Connor, the academic director and host of the TEFL Unlocked podcast for the TEFL Academy, to discuss a new paper that they have just released. Welcome to the podcast, Mairead.
Thank you so much for having us, Will.
It is wonderful to have you on. Now, the first question I'd like to ask is, could you explain a bit about what the TEFL Academy is and what it is you do?
Absolutely. So, Will, the TEFL Academy is an international training provider. We offer teaching English as a foreign language qualifications to those who are interested in teaching English to the world. We train people to teach English abroad, but also online, which is a booming market. We offer a range of courses, Will. We offer level 3 and level 5 diplomas accredited by Qualify, which in turn is regulated by Ofqual. And as well as that, we offer job support and guidance to our graduates so that they can access global opportunities post-certification. So in short, Will, we help people gain an internationally recognized qualification that allows them to live and work abroad as English language teachers.
And a very sort of very worthwhile qualification to have as well. Now, as I mentioned at the start, you've got a new report out, and the new report is entitled The Great Gen Z Exodus, and it looks at the record number of young people leaving the UK to work abroad. So what prompted you at the Academy to want to commission this report in the first place?
So, as we are an international company, Will, we have students from all over the world. However, in the last few years, we have noticed a noticeable increase in the numbers of students enrolling from the UK, and specifically young students, like aged 18 and up. So, because of this sharp increase in demand from the UK, we really just wanted to understand why there has been this surge in interest and enrollments.
Absolutely, and I think it's something that's really interesting as well, and we will discuss in a moment the fact that there has been this uptick, and what the report makes clear that it isn't just young people, but specifically those aged 20 to 29, with a divergence between the number of 20-year-olds and the number of 30-year-olds leaving the UK. Why do you think there is such a gap between Gen Z and millennials in terms of leaving the UK to look to work abroad?
It's so interesting, isn't it? We were staggered by this. I think, well, what it came down to was that the Gen Zs, they have fewer ties in general. Like, they are less likely to have mortgages, they're less likely to have established careers, perhaps they're less likely to have families and dependents. The Gen Zers, they just tend to have greater flexibility. They have more openness to travel, to relocation. It's like their mindset is completely different. Like, they prioritize experiences. Their work-life balance is sacred to them, mobility, lifestyle. So we think that is why the Gen Zers are more likely to up and leave. The millennials are still leaving in huge numbers, but yeah, less so than the Gen Zers, probably because they do tend to have more ties. Like, maybe they already have their established careers, maybe they already have families. They're more financially and socially rooted than the Gen Zers tend to be. So I think really, Will, the gap is perhaps less about wanting it more, but it's more about life stage and freedom and mindset to move.
Mhm. Absolutely, and obviously because the TEFL Academy, does have sort of like a large online presence. Do you think that kind of internet and kind of using the internet and growing up with the internet and social media has perhaps maybe contributed to that as well, with maybe some Gen Z as sort of like being kind of more familiar with some of the lifestyle opportunities that you might see via kind of Instagram or TikTok, whereas some millennials might not have obviously grown up with that or be that used to kind of viewing that kind of content, and therefore, just accessibility to that content on things like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook might also
Mhm.
have kind of, just being able to see what is out there and being used to seeing all the opportunities that are out there might have contributed somewhat.
Uh, oh yeah, undoubtedly, undoubtedly, and there is a marked rise in the TEFL influencers. Um, Well, when I tell you, Will, when I started in TEFL, like back in 2004, there were no TEFL influencers back then. So yeah, it blows my mind to see now on TikTok, on Instagram, all of these people out living their best lives, teaching, traveling. Yeah, that undoubtedly contributes a lot, I think, to the Gen Zers or the Gen Zers wanting to get up and out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the key things that the report really highlights is a lack of confidence in the UK, with many of the young people that you spoke to for the report citing that as a main reason for leaving to move elsewhere. Why do you think so many young people feel that they don't have any kind of confidence in the UK?
Yeah, we were really interested to know that. I mean, we suspected what the reasons might be, and the report definitely gave us evidence that the top reasons cited for a lack of confidence are the cost of living crisis. Like overwhelmingly, that was the top one. The notion that wages are just not keeping up with expenses, and the housing affordability, or rather the lack of housing affordability. Um, you know, all of that wrapped up into the cost of living crisis, yeah, is the overwhelming reason for a lack of confidence and perhaps a lack of optimism in the UK. But other factors that came to the fore were a sense of limited career progression. Like the Gen Zers, they just felt like there was no way in um, to a career path. And once you did get in, there was nowhere really to go. And as well, well, it would be remiss of us not to highlight that there is a feeling of political and societal restriction post Brexit. Brexit came up pretty regularly as a reason for a lack of optimism. And, the Gen Zers and also millennials, they just felt like there was such a huge limit put on their abilities to progress internationally.
Mm, absolutely,
Um,
and I think especially with some of the issues around the cost of living, definitely, as we were just discussing about social media, seeing the sort of like differences in the cost of living in some other countries can certainly be a factor as well. Do you think that that's something that, just being able to see how sort of like different the kind of like cost of living is, and the sort of like the greater affordability that you can have in other countries, particularly if you've got an occupation like teaching English as a foreign language, that can kind of like afford that sort of like lifestyle by having that career in a country where the cost of living isn't quite as stringent as it is here in the UK.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I really think that the Gen Zers and the millennials, they have come to terms with the fact that it's not how much money you earn, like in pounds, but it's what that money gets you. And yeah, they're certainly seeing that abroad, maybe in Thailand, Vietnam, countries like that in Southeast Asia, or countries in South America, for example, the money may not seem that much if you convert it back to UK pounds, but they very cleverly realized that that is not the point anymore. It's all about the cost of living in whatever country you go to and what your money can get you. So yeah, it certainly creates, seeing how these teachers are living in Southeast Asia, in South America, it definitely creates a perception that opportunities are better elsewhere.
And that very much leads on to my next question. I think you've sort of anticipated a little bit there, but which kind of countries do young people seem to be moving to when they leave the UK? And is there any specific trend that your research shows in the types of roles young people are kind of like mainly looking for?
Mm, yeah, again, I'm going to bring up Brexit again. Um, Pre-Brexit, it would have been overwhelmingly Europe. Like everyone wanted to go teach in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, in Portugal. Um, but unfortunately, for those people who had interest in Europe, that avenue was rather abruptly shut off. So, you can't, like a person on a UK passport can't just go and work in a Spanish school now. Okay, there are visas involved, residency issues, etc. And for the schools hiring in Spain and in Italy, it's complicated now to hire a teacher on a UK passport. Um, so Brexit changed a lot. Europe is no longer the top destination. We are seeing now that it's Asia. Um, a lot of the correspondents to our survey said that they were aiming for Vietnam, Thailand, um, South Korea. Okay, Japan is always popular. Um, so Asia tends to be now the top destination for our graduates. Plus, they also have amazing teaching opportunities out there. Like if you're interested in teaching young kids, like kindergarten kids, there's a ton of opportunity there. Also in China, a lot of work. There's a lot of work in kindergartens and elementary schools. Um, Europe is still popular, of course, but there is a lot more red tape involved now than there would have been previously, and that can be a deterrent. Um, we've also seen something interesting, Will. A lot of our UK graduates are looking at Australia or New Zealand. Isn't that interesting?
Hmm.
Because, of course, as English-speaking countries, Australia and New Zealand, they get a lot of students there from other countries to learn English. So there's a very strong demand for English language teachers in in Australia and New Zealand. And the people who replied to our survey figured that, well, if they're going to do visa stuff anyway, why not go to Australia or
Yeah.
New Zealand? Um, Central and South America are always in demand, okay, for the more adventurous um, travelers. And we also have a lot of people wanting to go to Africa. So honestly, every continent was represented when it comes to where our graduates wanted to go. But Asia, I would say, is the top.
Yes, it, it
Um,
it it certainly seems like you can understand as we've sort of like discussed, given the cost of living and things like that, why that might be sort of like particularly attractive to your graduates, and that is kind of like understandable as to why they might specifically want to go there.
mhm.
How much do you think that this trend is the result of a longer term issue? So we've touched upon Brexit a little bit. Is it the result of a longer sort of like term issue, or is it more specific recent policies enacted by the government that you think have kind of accelerated this trend, or kind of like generated this trend of Gen Zers leaving the UK?
Mm. Well, our report suggests that it's both, but I think it does lean towards a longer term structural issue. Um, so the long-term factors, again, as we said before, housing affordability, wage stagnation, um, you know, over decades, this has led us to where we are now. In terms of more recent accelerators, yeah, the cost of living crisis, and specifically now, because who can predict what's going to happen from one day to the next anymore? Who would dare try to predict what is going to happen next to make our cost of living even higher? Um, and I also think that post-pandemic, in the
Hmm.
post-pandemic era,
Yeah.
there has been such a shift in expectations of, work-life balance, etc. Um, so yeah, more recently, Brexit and COVID, I think
Yeah.
have been very, very significant contributors to this trend. So yeah, a mix, I would say, Will, of longer term issues and more recent global unexpected developments.
Yes, as you say, I think the world that we live in at the moment is one in which there is so much unpredictability that
Mm.
it's very difficult to to think what could potentially happen um, next. We're coming towards the end of the podcast, Mairead. It's been wonderful to have you on, but I do have one final question for you. What is the one key thing you hope anyone who reads the report takes away from it?
Mhm. I think, Will, that we would really like people to understand that this is not just a temporary spike of Gen Zers and millennials leaving. Okay, it's not a fad.
Yeah.
It's more like some sort of generational shift. Moving abroad is just something that has become mainstream, and that younger people are just actively seeking opportunities outside the UK. They are running towards what they see as more opportunity and better prospects for, a life well lived with work-life balance. And, while it is wonderful for them, it's important to realize that the UK risks losing a significant portion of its young workforce because maybe they have an amazing time for 5 years, 10 years, and then they come back, but maybe they don't. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It really is, and I think it is an incredibly worthwhile report to read if you haven't read it already. Thank you once again for taking the time to speak to me, Mairead. If there are, sort of like anyone wants to find out more about the TEFL Academy, where should they go to find out more about the work that you do there?
hmm So the easiest way is to head along to our website, www.theteflacademy.com, and you will also find us on all of the socials. So just search for the TEFL Academy, and we will be more than happy to welcome you and give you more information.
Wonderful. Thank you once again for taking the time to speak to me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you've enjoyed it, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbeam, and Amazon Music. You can also follow us on Twitter, @DebatedPodcast, like us on Facebook, Debated Podcast, and if you'd like to get in touch with us, whether about appearing on an episode of the podcast or commenting on an episode that you've listened to, you can do so at thedebatedpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you listen to the next one.